Today's guest is Robert Puharich. He's the founder at IsleFlow. Hey, Rob. Thank you for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me. Love being here.
All right, great. Yeah, I'm. Um, your background, for those that don't know, you're an educator, marketing content writer, and podcast producer, and now author. How does that feel?
It feels good. It was a lot of work. It was a very big learning process, but well worth it. I'm happy with the product. This is the book, Building Brilliance, with co-authored with you, taking all the insights from this wonderful podcast. So it was a great process, great product. Very happy.
Yeah. And this is your first one.
It is my first one. Yeah, it's a big deal. It took a lot longer than I expected. It took a lot more hours than I expected. However, there was so much to learn. There's so many good people I got to speak with, and I'm very happy with the outcome. And I hope others will learn from it as well, which I believe they will. That's why I did
Yeah.
it.
I mean, describe the book that for those that don't know. Like, what is it? What type of people are in it and stuff like that.
So it's based with off of interviews from the Specified podcast, the Specified Growth podcast. It has the podcast when I started writing was over 300 interviews. There was a lot of information, a lot of good information. And for anybody not keeping up weekly, to go through 300 episodes, is a lot of episodes. So what I did was I kind of went through and selected various podcast episodes. And I tried to keep it a little bit diverse so that we got a little bit of everything. And I took the insights from construction leaders, executives, and also from other entrepreneurs that aren't necessarily in construction who provided insights that are just relatable to business. So I did 39 interviews I went through, and I took the insights out, wrote them into articles, and put them all into a book that's based on different things that people can learn from.
Yeah. The idea, just to add more to it, the idea was not just to pick, a random collection. You need to try to fit it into a theme, right? There's different aspects of business, and you want to address those in different ways. And although I think for me, the sad thing is there's so many people that had great interviews that we couldn't put in. It somehow just didn't fit with the format, or we already had a story or two or article or two in that area. So there was a ton of people that we could have, you know, so that would have been great too, that we just couldn't find a way to make work.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were kind of in a position where, we had we had a topic, but we had three different views on it, and we had to choose which one to put in there. And so we had to make a decision, and it would have been great to have all of them in there, as you mentioned, but at some point we had to cap it at 40 because we would have had a pretty significant book if we kept going. A lot bigger, sorry, I should say.
Yeah, I know. I think originally when we talked about it, like, yeah, 150 pages, it turned out to 350.
Yes.
Okay, so walk me through like which was the most memorable in terms of article for you? Not the best or whatnot, but what was the most memorable?
One that stands out is Ben Bensell speaks on innovation. And we often hear inventing and innovating. And, I didn't really know the difference between the terms. And so Ben is big on innovation and brings out some really interesting ideas on how to innovate, starting from the first employee that makes contact with the customer all the way up through the leadership team. And innovating, one of the things he discusses innovating is listening to customers, and that's where a lot of the ideas come from. And my perspective on innovation beforehand was sort of a process where you kind of sat down and you thought about what can we do, or something fell into your lap. Whereas Ben speaks to innovating as in it's all the time, it's always around you. Ideas are always there, communication can always take place, And it was just a different mindset or a different way to think about innovating and how to approach it and how everybody can be a part of innovation. It's not just a leadership team. It's not just somebody that's focused on that. It's literally everybody in the organization.
Yeah, I like how with Ben, I like how you're talking about innovation is, those sort of the connections between individuals is not as clean and linear that than some people think that and I also like the way that he was highlighting how different organizations approach it.
Mhm.
Samsung approaches it this way, BASF approaches it that way.
Yeah.
Just different ways that organizations can be successful. There's not one formula.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just it's the whole concept of culture and being together as an organization, which there's another article on culture in the book as well. Um, but it's something that's kind of gaining, more attention is the whole company culture. But then that company culture leads to many things, and innovation is one of them. So to go into other articles in the book on culture, it's how do we build a culture? How do we build, collaboration? How do we build people getting along? And when we can build that culture, then we can build other great things, which is an aspect of the book we tried to cover is, how does one article lead to another? How can we connect them? And that's a good example of that.
Good. All right. What's something else that was memorable? Whether it was an interview or some point that someone made.
Well, Rob Strobel speaks about his Berg system, which is business units running great, how they scaled massively, which I think it's very relevant to construction in terms of how to scale because it's easy to think small, but in Rob's case, this is how to think big. And he set up units around America or around a certain area where he could get that unit working great in that area so that he didn't have people commuting all over the country, which allowed them to scale, set up a system, and then once they perfected that sort of system, they were able to just keep growing. So I think for anybody looking to scale, that's a really good idea to think about, at least to plant the seed of growth.
Yeah, and I think with Rob Strobel, which is I think one of the largest specialty contractors in the U.S. is the insight around that, right? They have all these separate units because they were following one insight. And that one insight that Rob Strobel brought up was that you know, he wanted, his business and his activities for one of these business units to be, I think it was less than 100, did he say 100 miles?
Yeah, it
And,
was within
so
driving distance,
yeah, I
within
think he
commuting
used
distance. So
100 miles, and essentially they just didn't want the employees to stay overnight,
mhm,
to have to, or stay out of town or on a hotel or something like that, and they could go home to their families, to their own bed every night. And the insight was, when people don't get to do that, they get lonely. They, maybe there's substance abuse. There's all sorts of other things
mhm,
that, uh, you know, is tied to that. So that simple but effective insight was the basis of trying to create these smaller independent units that would be able to do not small jobs, but slightly, large, mid-sized to small jobs. They have a sweet spot where they can, really hone in on creating these units that could, that have effective leadership, that could target certain type jobs and be successful. So the thinking and structure around that, I thought that was really clever.
absolutely, and it is a problem. I mean, and then the costs, with staying overnight, the costs go up. Not to mention all the negatives that you were speaking to. So it's just it's a different way to think about it. It's how can we get our families keep our families together, which we know as family people that's a big deal. So yeah,
Yeah, some of the best ideas are simple ones, right? Very, very well executed, simple
yeah,
ideas, right? So, I mean, then another one, do you remember David Merriman Scott's?
Yeah, with building fanocracy, building fans. That's a big one. He was early on the social media, very early in terms of how to build fans, and he goes into sort of a playbook on how to have somebody become a what he terms fan, all the way from how you speak to them, how far you sit from them, where you meet them. He breaks it right down into detail in terms of how do we get people on our side, how to get people to believe in us, and how do we keep them around. So it was an early take on social media, which is turning out to be brilliant.
Yeah, his first book, the PR related book, was the playbook of that most marketing professionals used for social media marketing. I mean, his book in 2000, I think it was 2006, basically was the playbook for social media marketing for the first 10 years of social media existence. So he knows what he's talking about. And like you said, like you know, and I also like the fact that how sometimes people are so and I always like this. I'm a little bit more different now. Is like business is business and personal is separate, and whereas he's all about, hey, look, bring there's a way to bring your personal hobbies, your interests into the business side and be successful. Like he talks a lot about his liking Grateful Dead, surfing, and then finds a way to mesh that all together. And feels that in order to develop that raving fan base or that raving connection base, if you can bring a few personal things into it, that'll definitely speed up the process.
Yeah, I think he speaks to his child got involved in it, and then they had something in common, and then they got along. So it built the whole sort of family culture around that as well.
I mean, the story of David Merriman Scott's got, like, I think 10 to 13 bestsellers or something. I don't remember the exact number, but I gotta believe, maybe in a small way, the reason I got him to agree to come on the podcast is he's very much connected to Japanese culture.
Uh,
So I don't know if you know that.
he did mention it. Yeah, he
Yeah.
mentioned it.
So his wife's Japanese. He's lived in he's been to Japan many times.
Mhm.
Anything to build rapport, right? And
Yeah.
so, those sort of things matter. But he goes into it's a very simple concept, but he's really dug into it in a very deep detail. Like for you, Rob, like what sort of like personal things or personal stories have helped you kind of developed as a professional?
Well, it's been a lot of mentorship. So that was what my article was about in the book was the power of mentorship and finding the right people around you. Um, having somebody to ask questions and help you, and somebody that wants the best for you. And when you have someone that wants the best for you, that's when you can get honest answers, and you need to trust them. And you have to have a common goal. And when you can ask those honest questions and get honest answers, that's how you develop. And what I find, and I've learned a lot since I've got myself into one of those situations, is that you get a lot of surface information in life. The hard conversations are called hard conversations for a reason, and a lot of people don't like to have them, and sometimes they're not appropriate. But when you have a common goal and a trusted relationship, you can have those conversations, and that's how we progress. And the key to that is, I think there's two keys actually. One is finding someone that's not way ahead of you, like they can still understand where you're coming from. They've been there. And two is that they're willing to put in the time, but you're also willing to put in the time. And you have to have something to offer, which could be something as simple as wanting to get better. Because a lot of people like to see other people get better. It's just there's a lot of people out there that want to help. But you have to put in the time as well. So rather than asking all the time, you got to give, 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 and then ask. And that's something that I'm finding I have to explain to a lot of the younger, generation when I'm trying to speak and say, sometimes you have to do things for free, or sometimes you have to, adjust things or make it work so that you can help somebody else, because if you want to be helped, you can't just get helped all the time. So mentorship was a big part of this. And then I think the biggest thing that I learned was just surround yourself with the right people. Uh, you need to have a goal, whatever that goal is. I think it's important to be very clear, and this is something you've taught me is, clarity on what you want, because if you don't know what you want, it's hard to go get it. And then once you're clear on your goal, is finding the right people to get you to that goal. So, again, somebody that's been there, but also somebody that's not going to lead you in the wrong direction. And a lot of people don't do it on purpose. It's like asking, and I learned this hard way, asking real estate advice from somebody that's never bought or sold real estate. Something I did early in my life is asking somebody, and maybe them give me their best answer, but their best answer probably wasn't the right answer that I could have gotten from somebody else. And it's the same thing in anything. The same thing when writing a book. Same thing when starting a business and all the rest of that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, what's something that's unexpected, or maybe you didn't expect it in this certain way when going through the process of putting together this book?
One of the things that really stands out, and I've told the story 10 times, is when I was when I started working on the podcast and writing the book and releasing some of the articles. I was approached by a partner at Goldman Sachs for an interview, which was a significant interview because I had nothing to do with Goldman Sachs and not in that industry. And I didn't really see myself as somebody who could, you know, move the needle for somebody at that level. And she reached out to meet because she was looking to start a business in the construction industry. She saw that I had a network that could help her out, and I had some contacts that could help her out. So we met. And the reason that's significant to me is because she wanted to meet with me because I was doing things. And I was putting articles out there. I was talking to people. I was connecting with people. I was engaging with people. So I didn't really realize the impact that I could have on somebody. Um, and that resulted just from me doing things. And we had a conversation, and then we were able to connect her with you, and you know the rest worked out for everybody involved. However, had I not been doing these things, had I not been putting myself out there, that wouldn't have happened. And so a surprise to me was, it was a surprise because I hadn't actually seen it before to that level. That was a reminder that, just action will lead to more good things.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. Um,
One more, actually, I'll give you another story.
yes.
I can't remember if I mentioned it or not on the other pod, but I started writing these articles, and I wrote an article on Ben Bensal on innovation, and he just published a book with a significant publisher. And so when I wrote the article, he was excited about it, um, but he had to send it to his publisher, and his publisher ended up editing the article, and the article came back with a lot of red on it.
The whole
Um,
thing was
the
red.
the whole thing was red, yeah. The whole thing was red. Uh, However, I learned a ton. It was a really great experience. I had a professional publisher edit my article. I got to go through it and see what they did, why they did it, and at the end of the day, everybody's happy. And it got edited, it got put out there, and then the article's in the book. So it was a win-win.
Yeah. Well, they liked it. Ultimately, they liked it, right? Right? So that's the thing. It was, I guess, someone that wrote a, biography for a past US president, right? So they
Yes,
got some experience, right?
yes, they've spoken to some pretty significant people and wrote about it. So
And that
yeah,
probably gave you a lot of confidence to be able at least be able to get that check mark from seeing the red to getting the, thumbs up.
yeah, and the red wasn't bad. It was just, they suggested ways to do things, but the information was good. The structure was good. So the largest parts of the article were good. It's just some of the grammatical stuff that they would, write differently, or maybe in a more when they're publishing books, they write differently, and so it was a good perspective. It was a good way to see and learn, and yeah, it didn't take too much work to fix, so it was okay.
Now, collaborating with all sorts of people on these various things, right? Because the first thing, what we had to do is basically determine when doing a episode or something like that, or I'm giving an interview, or being the host, um, basically, you say a bunch of things, but the thing is, it goes in all sorts of different directions, and there may be nuggets. You know, the hard part sometimes is to distill out, hey, what's a theme? What's the concrete thing? Now, working with all these different individuals, you must have learned a lot about people's working styles and preferences and all that stuff.
Yeah, I did, and I learned I learned that sometimes simplicity is important because when I look at some of these significant people and think about how busy they are and how much they have going on, and some of these people get hundreds of emails per day, and how do they manage this? Um, I learned that they have systems. It's mostly systemized. They do have assistants, but they have ways to do it. But there's an article in the book by Jim Still, who is the CEO of Danby Appliances and founder of Danby Appliances, as busy as can be. But one of his things is simplifying life. So he replies to every email. Now, he doesn't write a story for every email. Sometimes it's 2 words or 3 words. But one of his things is replying to every email, so that he stays on top of it. He makes sure to connect with people on LinkedIn and respond to any inquiries. He still gets his exercise in. He'll do things like a walking interview or a walking phone call. But it's just the simplicity. It's staying on top of things, making sure that you are connecting with the people that you need to connect with still, no matter how busy you are. And then he'll take time out and do things like he'll take a little period of time without any technology, and he'll write or he'll catch up, or every day he'll take he'll use the Pomodoro method where he'll block out a period of time and just get stuff done. And so yeah, I learned that you can still be busy and still have lots of things going on, but at the same time, find a way to get through it.
Yeah. What's been your most memorable response from the book?
Um, that's a good one. There's a lot of responses. I mean, just when it came out, we just recently published it and put it on LinkedIn. Just some of the responses on LinkedIn. I mean, getting people like Tom Raber, who has a TV show, he's written books. When he reposts it and says "good job," that's really nice. And uh, just seeing friends and family kind of say like, "Whoa, what is this? You wrote a book?" And I say, "Yeah," and didn't see it coming. But I think the biggest thing is just having people kind of see and appreciate the time and effort it took, and just acknowledge it. Yeah, it's nice to get a little bit of acknowledgement from people that have been in the industry a long time, that have written books and understand what it means. And so, yeah, just the reposts, which is such minor things, are really cool in the big scheme of it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like David Charles's voicemail that you got, I mean, there's a lot of very accomplished individuals that have lots of accolades and done lots of speeches and been mentioned in a lot of books before. But we had some first time sort of people that were mentioned in these because they had very good insights and stuff like that. Um,
Just before you go on,
and
Tats, I'd like to speak to David Charles's
go
voicemail.
ahead,
Actually, yeah,
go ahead,
uh,
go ahead.
David Charles sent me a voice note and a text, and it was the happiest voice note ever. I have it saved, and just the enthusiasm of how cool it is, and then you know again posting on LinkedIn uh, an image of him reading the book out in public, and the impact it's had for David Charles has been great. And my wife said you need more of that energy in your life, so um, hence the saved voice voice note. But uh, just the impact that it's had on people have come out in different ways, and it makes it all worth it. It makes all the time, effort, and all sleepless nights well worth it.
Yeah, that's good. Perfect. So in your mind, what's next?
Well, the process was there was a lot of learning in the process. A lot of great insights came out of it. Um, uh, we were able to help a lot of people by doing this, both in business and construction, as well as some of the people in the book to get their names and stories and insights out there. Um, I thought it was such a good experience that I started a company called IsleFlow Content Studio, where we're gonna do this for others. Just building authority, trust, credibility. There's so many good people doing great things that we've learned throughout all the podcasts, and some of the stories aren't out there. And I think it'd be valuable to get those stories out there. Um, Having a book leads to good things. It can lead to more media, more attention, and just the legacy piece, getting some of those stories, packaging those stories into one document to have for generations, to have to pass to clients or to read yourself, because a lot of people don't really think of their stories. I mean, some of these companies are 100 years old and the stories are all over the place. And putting it all into a document, giving it to a client is there's a lot of value in that. And having it out there on Amazon and Google and all that stuff helps with other aspects of business. So that's next. I'm going to work on that and help other people also go through this process and get their names out there.